So I've maybe not heard as many of these speeches. I wish I would have heard one of Elijah. He could bring tears to people's eyes, I understand. And once in a while his own. But I think it was a great speech, and I think it points out the optimistic view that the governor has of the future of this state. If we work together and cooperate, and for example, he mentioned one of the things is a war on drugs down in southern Ohio, ironically, ethical drugs and all things. And that bill will be on the floor this week. It's a bill that has been worked on very diligently by a number of our members, one of whom happens to be a physician. So it's a bill that obviously means a lot to the people in that region. He also talked about jobs, and I think we all know that that's what he's about, is jobs. I was impressed and pleased with his handling of jobs as I've had the privilege of working with him and traveling. We were up yesterday at American Greetings, and I don't know how many people were standing there, but over 500, I think, all around. And he pointed out to them that one of his goals was to see to it that the people there who were younger had a chance to keep a job here without moving their families to some other place. Those who were middle-aged had a chance to maybe have their grandchildren grow up with them. And those who were elderly would have the opportunity to still associate with friends that they had at that particular plant over many, many years. There are 4 or 5 other companies, headquarters in Ohio, that we're working with now. This is not a simple challenge that we face with no complication. We have passed legislation that gives the governor the tools, House Bill 58, but I want to go beyond that and emphasize that we have the opportunity here, because of the nature of this state, because of the skilled workers. I was pleased to hear him talk one more time about Youngstown, because of course that was a place where people made a good living who had never even finished high school, working in those steel mills over there. And all I can think of was a friend of mine, George Tavlak, who came to me on the floor one day. He looked white as a sheet, and he said, something or other works are closing. I had no idea what he was talking about. We didn't know about it in Medina. But of course, the situation there and in many other cities in this state, that's a problem that we have to address. And we have to be ready, bipartisan, to work with the governor on these issues, and we will be. We had help in this chamber from a few people who are discerning Democrats on the Jobs Ohio bill, and I think we will continue to have that kind of support from people who recognize what's ahead of them. It was a great speech. I'm very pleased that we have the opportunity with this governor to know what his vision is. It's one thing to enunciate the political goals and that sort of thing. It's something else to express a vision of what this state can do. Without vision, the people perish. Thank you.
So I felt that the governor gave a very sobering yet very challenging speech. And I'm here to tell you that Senate Republicans are going to answer that challenge. We've demonstrated that in less than 2 months in office by tackling some very difficult issues. And let's face it, the governor laid it out very well. Change is hard. You only have to listen to the chants from outside to understand how difficult change is. But the changes that we are talking about, the transformational change that the governor talked about, are changes that are going to affect all Ohioans, and we are all going to be better off for that. He talked about the legislation that we passed in a bipartisan way, Jobs Ohio. He talked about the regulatory reform issues that we passed. And obviously, we are tackling a very tough issue in collective bargaining reform. But those are initiatives that are absolutely essential if we are to provide our state and local governments with the tools they need to manage in a very difficult environment. We are trying to give our local governments the same tools that every family uses when they manage their own budget. Give them the flexibility to manage within their means. And I am confident, as I stand here with my leadership team and those that have stood with us in our caucus, that we are going to be a partner with the Speaker and his team and with the Governor to make sure that Ohioans do prosper, that they are in a position to get the jobs they so earnestly want. And we are going to help them in every every way possible to continue our focus on creating jobs in the state of Ohio. Be happy then, the speaker and I will be happy to answer questions.
Most satisfied audience I've seen in a month.
Speaker, you've been around a while. Have you ever seen anything like this in terms of the state of the state with the election outside going on? Can you talk a little bit about that?
No, I have not. Obviously, I think the President of the Senate put it very well, that when you have change, there's going to be resistance to that change. I think that's what we're seeing today. I think it's the same sort of thing we saw as various businesses and industries closed in this state. We have to look beyond the very short term. We have to accommodate the challenges that we face and respond to those challenges in a constructive way. And I think that the governor gave us a very clear view of that today.
Speaker, we've heard the figure of $8 billion being thrown around for about a year now. And the governor actually used that figure in his speech today. Is that what you're being told to hold in this budget?
It's my understanding that that is the number, and I understand it from some people I've had respect for 40 years. So at this point in time, I think that's the number. My sense is that there is a quickening of the economy at this point, which is still very, very marginal, but that there may be the possibility of not having $8 billion debt at the end of, but we're not going to have that reduced by $1 billion. So it's very close to that number, in my opinion, based on the expertise of others.
Mr. Speaker, to you and President Niehaus, what's the legislature prepared to do in this shared sacrifice in terms of cost to run the legislature? Are you guys willing to cut your salary like Speaker Baylor has done 5% or more? Or is everything going to be the same?
From the Senate perspective, we're all state employees. And so we certainly, when it comes to health care, pay our health care costs. Except the changes that would come in terms of reducing costs. I'm proud to say that in the Senate over the last few years, we've been very lean and been very careful about how we have spent taxpayer money, because it's just the right thing to do. So we're prepared to do our part and share in the sacrifice that we're asking all Ohioans to share in, so that we can return to prosperity.
The House was not, unfortunately, in my control in the last 2 years. So things that could have been done and left in place were not. But obviously we are making every effort, and we'll have a press conference on that later on as to the amount of money that we managed to cut. And it's obviously something under our Ohio Constitution that we can't do now. We can only prospectively cut salaries and so forth.
Governor seemed to throw down the gauntlet on nursing homes, getting a lot of Medicaid money that every governor has for the last 12 years. Are you guys prepared to back him up? And, well, it seems like the legislature gives back a little on the executive proposal. You guys going to follow through?
Well, having done a lot of work on the Medicaid budget over the years, I can tell you the message that I heard is a message that probably you've heard from your mother and father. I want to stay at home. And any of you that have been in the situation with elderly parents know that that's where they prefer to be. Their quality of life, they feel much safer there. They feel better there because they're more comfortable there. The surroundings are familiar. There's a side benefit to that. The state saves money. But let's not forget the parts that you can't quantify with dollars, and that's the quality of life. But there comes a point in many people's lives where they need skilled nursing facilities. And so we need to make sure the infrastructure is there. We need to make sure that the people providing those skilled services that you cannot provide in a home setting are there. And so the message I heard from the governor was, let's make sure that the elderly have a choice. And let's give a preference to allow them to stay at home. And I think that if I went back and talked to my parents, that's what they would say. Let me stay at home as long as I can. But someday, if I need to take another step, I want to make sure the resources are there so that I can take that next step and live my life with dignity.
I think one of the things that for each of us involved in this is personal, as you have said, Mr. President. My mother was in a nursing home for many years. She had Alzheimer's. She was Phi Beta Kappa in her junior year, but the last part of her life, she didn't know us. That cries out for the kind of help that the nursing home industry provides. My dad watches me every day. We're having a session out here. He's got a television set up of some kind. I'm technologically challenged, I don't understand it. But he actually can watch me from his bed in the dining room of his home. And he's still very sharp. He still reads. He's happy at home. And I would not want him not to be there no matter what, as long as the finances are there for him to do that. And there are thousands and thousands of people in that latter situation. And I don't think it's too much to say that we ought to be exploring all the possibilities for people to remain in their homes. The difference in cost is obvious, the Governor mentioned it. But beyond that, there's a quality of life that is in our homes. Dad moved there when he came back from the war in '45, and he's been there ever since. And he doesn't want to go anywhere else. That's a blessing.
You warned about using stimulus money for operations. Governor Strickland was only able to do that with the votes you're confiscated. Was that a mistake, and do you regret that?
I don't regret it because at the end of the day, we have a responsibility to govern. And I was in those meetings when we were trying to come up with what somebody could refer to as a purely Republican alternative. And there just weren't enough votes for it. We had members who wanted to rely on BLT revenue. Well, where would we have been had we relied on $500 million or $1 billion of BLT revenue? It never materialized. So at the end of the day, under the leadership of President Harris, we had to make a tough decision that we had to govern. We had to keep the state operating, and we did it. So given the alternatives and the choices that we had at the time, I would say no, it was not a mistake. I much prefer some of the ideas that I've heard from Governor Kasich. I'm looking forward to seeing the details of his budget because it is going to be a challenge, and we are going to have to make sacrifices. But at the time, we made a decision based on the information and, frankly, the financial resources we had available to us at that time. It's different now. We have a different leader with different ideas, and I'm looking forward to accepting that challenge.